there are more people who do thank me for what I write, specifically families in Maine who are interracial families. I get a lot of white folks raising biracial or black children in this state, people who love this state and, figured it'd be a great place to raise their children, never understanding that what would be a great place for someone who's white with white children is actually hell for those of us who are not white. From the time your kid goes to school and they're that other, and they've got to deal with the kids picking at their hair, or if their name's different, or if they have an accent, and it just goes on and on and on. So I get a lot of folks like that who reach out to me to say thank you. You've given voice to something that I have a hard time talking about. Most certainly I hear from people of color in the state of Maine, but I also, oddly enough, I hear a lot from people of color outside of the state of Maine, people who are curious about the state of Maine. I mean, as someone who's not originally from this part of the country, I have to say that for many of us in like the Midwest and further out, it's like, Maine, where is that at? Like, honestly, Maine, that's a state. But I get a lot of people who hear about the beauty of the state and they want to know, if I move there, would it be safe? I'm looking at a job there. I'm looking at school there. So I get a lot of, those. I get a lot of the folks, white folks who, they want to have these conversations, but again, they don't know how to have them with people of color. And I do get people who tell me where to go. Those can be kind of scary. I've had several instances where pieces that I've written have gone viral. And I hate when that happens. In fact, it's really changed how I write in the sense of, I've had national publications reach out to me, and I actually don't want my pieces to get that big, just because it's stressful for me to deal with people, talking about my kids. I know I had an incident last year that went viral based off something I wrote on the blog, and, I had a woman who referred to my children as like mongrels. And I actually asked someone, could you find this woman for me? She lived in Maine, and I was able to get her name and phone number, and I decided against it because, of course, then I would look kind of like the angry black woman. But when I get that sort of stuff, or they go back to where you come from, over the years, I've had a few death threats. I don't get as many anymore, which is kind of good, but at the same time, it makes me very cautious. I mean, when I started writing, I just figured I'm writing, and I didn't think it would have an impact to the point that there are people who would seek me out. Last year, I did have a guy who popped up in my office in Boston, which then necessitated me changing the security procedures in our office to sort of keep me safe. I mean, no one ever knows when I'm going to be in the office, and that's actually other than our actual staff. And that's by design, because I don't want people popping up in my office. I sure in the hell don't want people popping up where I live. So those would be the range of responses, from the, we're really glad you're doing what you're doing, to, if I see you, I'm going to put a bullet in you. So you can't change something that you don't understand. Ultimately, I think sometimes people confuse the work that I do with looking at racism as a personal system. And oddly enough, I rarely care about personal racism. Not to say that I don't care, but I don't care about Uncle Timmy the racist. I care about systems and institutionalized racism. But at the same time, if we're going to dismantle systems of racism, institutional, systemic, it's about dealing with people. A lot of people look at this big picture view, but don't understand this smaller view, which is you actually have to interact with people. When we look at our criminal justice system, I mean, right now there's a lot of work that's being done, restorative justice and other efforts, I think, that sort of address some of the disparities in terms of race. But at the same time, are we actually having conversations with one another? The conversations that can really be meaningful. And so oddly enough, I mean, I started my online experience very much in sort of my own silo of wanting to be with people who are similar to me in thought. But now, being willing to engage across the board with all sorts of people. There are people who most certainly I learned from online. As I, grow further and further into middle age, I'm aware of my own biases and my own limitations. So for me, having sort of this wider audience that I interact with is great because, I joke, they keep me young. They keep me knowing what's going on so that I don't get set in my own, my own ways of going that's no, we didn't know. So yeah, I think that if we're going to be serious about change, we do need to have the ability to actually communicate with folks who are unlike us.